Hi, my name is Marc Jackman, and this is a demonstration of a DIY sleep apnea screening device. It's a low-cost, real-time chest strap breathing monitor that I built using an Arduino and pressure sensor. Sleep apnea is one of the most common and most underdiagnosed conditions in the world, according to a 2019 estimate published in the Lancet Respiratory Medicine. Around 936 million adults globally have obstructive sleep apnea. Between 80 and 90% of those cases remain undiagnosed. A big reason for that is cost. A clinical sleep study costs somewhere between $1,000 and $3,000 per night. The consequences of going undiagnosed are serious. Untreated sleep apnea increases stroke risk by a factor of 2 to 3, on top of links to hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and daytime fatigue. When you look at what's already available today, the options fall into two camps. On the clinical side, polysomnography is the gold standard. It's highly accurate, but it means an overnight lab stay, a long wait list, and again, that $1,000 to $3,000 cost per night. On the consumer side, you have devices like WatchBats and apps like SnoreLab. WatchBats still requires wearing a finger sensor and costs $300 to $500 per test. Snoring apps only analyze audio, so they miss apnea events that aren't loud enough to pick up. That led me to ask a simple question. Can we screen for the two core signals, shallow breaths and apnea gaps? My proposed solution breaks down into four stages. First, sense the breathing. I used a thin film pressure sensor mounted on an elastic chest strap. Second, the Arduino reads the sensor through a voltage divider. Third, detect events. A peak and trough algorithm flags shallow breaths and apnea events in real time. Fourth, display. The data streams to a web dashboard that visualizes the waveform and logs every event as it happens. The whole pipeline runs on hardware you can hold in one hand. At a hardware level, the idea is simple. Physical chest expansion during breathing becomes an analog voltage that the Arduino can read. As the chest expands, the pressure sensor's resistance changes. That change turns into a measurable voltage. The Arduino samples that voltage continuously and streams it over USB. Here is the full bill of materials. The Arduino is around $10. A thin film pressure sensor is about 8. A 10 kilo ohm resistor and breadboard with jump wires bring things up a few more dollars. The chest strap is just so inelastic I reused. A USB cable powers everything. All in, the hardware cost comes up to about $24, which is roughly 1% of a clinical sleep study. Here's the diagram of the build of the prototype. It shows how the sensor sits centered on the elastic strap and how the strap routes around the chest. It also shows the wiring of the prototype. Here is the actual prototype in use. The strap is worn snugly across the chest at the sternum. Every time the chest expands on an inhale, the sensor is compressed against the body. That small mechanical compression is what drives the voltage signal we see on the dashboard. The whole device is light enough to wear comfortably. On the software side, 5 lightweight steps run on a microcontroller. A moving average smooths the signal. The algorithm finds peaks and troughs to measure breath amplitude. If the amplitude drops well below the running average, the breath is flagged as shallow. If no breath is detected for an extended period, an apnea event is logged, all in real time. The dashboard is browser-based. It uses the Web Serial API built into Chrome to read directly from the Arduino over USB, so there are no drivers to install and no cloud backend. What you see on screen is the live breathing waveform at the top, a breath counter, a shallow event counter, and a status indicator. On the side is an event log that timestamps every flagged event. It's a single HTML file that runs entirely on my laptop. For this demo, I deliberately shifted to shallow breathing. As you can see from the dashboard, many breaths are being labeled shallow and are being added to detected events. For this demo, I recorded myself normally breathing while wearing the device. I took bigger breaths and flared my ribcage so my breaths can be easily visualized. As you can see from the dashboard, most breaths are labeled normal. This third demo simulates an actual apnea event. I held my breath intentionally to see if the device would flag it correctly. Pulling the three demos together across normal breathing, shallow breathing, and the apnea simulation, the device was able to classify all three scenarios. While this prototype successfully demonstrates basic respiratory monitoring, there are a few key limitations to address. Most significantly, the detection results are far from perfect. There was a high rate of false positives where apnea or shallow breaths are flagged during periods of completely normal breathing. Also, the USB restricts movement, and the pressure sensor is highly sensitive. If the user shifts slightly, the baseline changes and triggers an incorrect alert. To conclude, the chest strap sensor and Arduino combination was able to semi-reliably detect breathing cycles, distinguish shallow from normal breathing, and flag simulated apnea events in real time. The hardware cost is orders of magnitude below any clinical option. It's important to note that this is a screening tool, not a diagnostic tool. Anyone flagged by it should still see a specialist. For future work, I would like to improve the reliability of the device and validate against a pulse oximeter over a full night. I would also like to add a microphone for snoring detection, which would improve the quality of results. Thank you for watching. I'd like to acknowledge the professor for her hard work throughout the semester. My three main references are shown here.